so glad that you could join us today. We are coming to two audiences today for the first time. Welcome to you watching from YouTube and welcome to you watching from Facebook. You have joined Ask DeAnna Anything. My name is Andrea and I am here with DeAnna Batdorf, who is an amazing Ayurvedic practitioner, lymphatic specialist, and you have the opportunity to catch her ear for an hour and ask her whatever questions come to mind. So how are you doing today, DeAnna?
Doing really, really wonderful. Yeah. I was happy to feel and have that little tiny bit of rain come. I know I'm hearing a lot of people say, I can't wait to spring because it's so cold where we are. Not as cold as many other places, though. Let's just remind us Californians. Our idea of a frost is pretty funny. and just this, we don't want spring too quickly unless you're thinking spring brings rain, like April showers. We need water. So I was just happy to see, I got little tiny bits of hail that came down while we were in our hot tub. And that was really fun, feeling them kind of like bounce off our bodies and just that whimsicalness of like, whoa, this is coming out of the sky all cold and wet and, oh, the moisture. So yeah, I'm excited to see it. And yeah, life is good.
That's great. That's great.
I'm ready for some questions. And I love this new, like, ooh, we're streaming on 2. It's like, whoa, we're growing up.
It's really fun. So yeah, we've got some questions already. The first 3 questions we have are from our last episode that we weren't able to get to. So that's just a little plug that even if you ask a question and we don't get to it, we'll hold on to it for the next time. And you can send us questions to our email address on our website. You can even post it as a DM on Facebook or Instagram. So don't worry, we will answer. And I'm already seeing that we've got Tolly here with us, and Tolly's got a question that we'll be able to get to soon as well. So welcome, everybody. Our first question comes from Ellen. She says, hi, DeAnna. Thank you for being here. I have been dealing with digestive issues and fatigue for a while now. It feels like food just sits in me and feels very heavy with waves of feeling unwell. So any advice on that?
Yeah. Tell me that one again. You don't have to start from the hi, DeAnna. That was lovely. But tell me the gist of that one just again. I feel like I missed something that I want to hear.
Ellen's been dealing with digestive issues and fatigue. She says that it feels like food just sits in me and feels very heavy with waves of feeling unwell, which might be nausea.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So few different things this could be. Great question, because this brings me to something. I just finished my body mapping class, and I made a very important case for the importance of our stomach. Our stomach is so incredibly important. And it really is the governing organ. It's the first organ in the whole body. So if you have something going on in your digestion that is within, let's say, an hour or even an hour and a half of a timeline, it's called the transit time of the gut. That's early stomach time. So the fact that you're eating and then the food is just sitting there and then it's wasting a bunch of energy, which brings on that fatigue, we have a stomach issue. Now, the question becomes, because we know the whole body breaks down into hot, cold, wet, dry. So that stomach could be cold, and cold stomach is going to make the food not just sit, because we need fire to liquefy things. So this may be a cold stomach, but what would present there would be that the food sits so long that it putrefies. So there would probably be like distension or bloating, or maybe belches, or maybe even odorous belches. These are the things that, more would be showing that there's not enough hydrochloric acid in the stomach. And hydrochloric acid we get from all kinds of enzymes and aromatics and spices, and spicier spices too, because sometimes we need a little bit of fire if it's gotten too cold, too alkaline pH in the stomach, because the stomach works hot and cold. It wants warm to get everything done, plus the liquid. It's a compost pile. It is literally the compost pile of the body. So that could be something to look at, and that would be using asafoetida and ginger and cardamom, which will fit into many of these categories. It's a stomach specific plant, and I sell those decorded seeds, which means the seeds right out of the pod. And I just want to say, I have some of the most beautiful, sweet. You want a dark brown, you don't want yellowing, you want like a really rich, almost sticky seed to know you're getting a high quality cardamom. And, my cardamom is quite beautiful. So you just do a teaspoon of those seeds every day. Cardamom, you just put them in a little bowl and you just keep noshing on those. And maybe right now I'm giving you the tridoshic answer, which means whether it's hot, cold, wet, or dry, cardamom, if you have a stomach issue, is a precursor. It starts making what's called DeAnna, which is circular motion. So you have too much up, belching, or too much down, which would be changing of the bowels. So that would really be our tridosha. The cold needs ginger, asafoetida, hydrochloric acid. And you can look up a list and see what foods have that. And then the other thing I'd really be considering here is if you have a dry stomach. And if you have dry stomach, that means you need flora. So this is the person who maybe the food going in is dry, the stomach itself is dry, and there's just not enough liquid to really make sure that you are turning that compost pile into a mulch. We have to mulch it, and it takes a liquid to do it. So probiotics, this would be the probiotics, this would be omega oils, and it would definitely also be cumin seeds. So here's another one where you could do like a half a teaspoon of cumin seeds or put a lot of cumin in your food, and it would be very good for that dry, because there's actually a lot of electrolytes in cumin, hydration. Same with celery seed. Okay. And I use a lot of spices with stomach care, because if you use them regularly, they are really going to do that startup work for you. And that's what we need. Then if you have a hot stomach, we need things that are more alkaline. And that's in the stomach called pepsin. It's our alkalizing agent. And so this idea, where do we get a pepsin? Well, that would be like green juicing. It would definitely be, cucumbers. It would be coriander seed and dill and Tulsi. And another one, shatavari. These are all stomach plants that would really cool it down if it's gotten too acidic pH. But that's not usually when food is sitting. So the core question about food sitting, it's probably not hot. Hot's more heartburn and sweating and rashes and feeling excessive, maybe even getting loose stool easily. So that's probably not the issue here. And then the other one I'm going to mention is the stomach that gets too wet. And this wet is going to be like too much mucus is in there. You put the food in, this could certainly be happening. It's called low metabolism. And this could be happening in this question because you put the food on mucus and there's not enough enkindling or stirring of the pot. There's no churnability. We're back to cardamom. This is another good one for cinnamon. And we need to stir the pot a little bit and really make sure there's an enkindled, stoked metabolism. And this is the use of enzymes. The more seeds in a fruit, the more enzymes are present. So multi-seeded fruits would really be the way to go if you think there's more of a wet or what we call sluggish stomach. So that would be the key way that I would be assessing this question and really looking at it. Now, we could go a little deeper in our remedies with this question, and we could think about cardamom essential oil. So the spice is like your everyday getting everything aligned, and you're getting dietary fiber out of those spices too. But what's Another thing you could do is you could specifically make a stomach digestive, either straight cardamom, 8 drops twice a day, right on the abdomen, and rub it around. Up on the diaphragm is where your stomach is. Or you could think of a digestive formula, like take some cardamom and some coriander and some fennel, and use those spices in a more specifically metabolic way, in a more chemical compound way, because that's where we get a little bit more of our quick directed medicine, is from those essential oils that are actually volatile gases made of chemistry. They're strong chemistry that go right into your blood. So you don't have to put that in your mouth to get it to your stomach. You put it on your abdomen and it's transdermal, and then they go right in through the skin from there. So that's the main way I would be answering this question. And I don't know if I'd lost. I'm going to kind of do a little check-in. I think I may have lost Andrea somewhere. And I'll see there you are. Hi. Are you there? Okay, so I don't see you now. That's the only bummer about this new channel, though. Oh, that's sweet. Okay. So that's kind of where I would go. And I'm just going to make a point to end this question and get to the next. That stomach is the first organ of the body. Anything within an hour and a half that is going on after you eat is connected to a stomach issue. It will end up affecting down the line because the stomach feeds the small intestine, and the small intestine gets all of your nutrients to your lymph and your blood, also called plasma and blood. And then our colon is really there to get waste out, the things we didn't digest, the things that were toxic. And that's why food has fiber in it, because we need to bind those toxins and they bulk up, and then the colon moves them out. And those are different transit times. But stomach is an hour and a half after eating, and it's an overlooked organ, probably because it is so first things first, And then we get beyond that with symptoms, and it's hard to remember to go back to the drawing board. But that's really what mouth and stomach is, going back to the hey, something's been going on too long. Probably something from the get-go happened. Go back to that. So dental care is a whole nother ball of wax that is going to affect stomach. So if it's not the food, or the remedies don't work, you might want to think if there's a strip cavity that's getting down into your stomach, because people sit around with a lot of cavities and don't go to the dentist for many reasons. And it's not always the best choice for our gut health. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks everybody for bearing with us as we struggle through this new platform, having fun. So we're ready for our next question. This comes from Madeline from last time. Madeline says that her mother has developed panic attack feelings, like a heart attack. They have increased. And so she's wondering what one can do about heart palpitations and tightness, both preventative and during the episode.
Okay. So first off, during the episode, we often want to have that thing that gets somebody out of it right away. And usually once they're in, they're going to have to get themselves out. And it's really about holding space. And you can tell them to breathe, but more be an example of how to get to natural breath is a really big part of any shock, any trauma, panic that is present. So, sure, a glass of water is going to be awesome, just there when ready, and some warm, even better if you had some warm water. And that's going to be for right after, it's not going to be like, stop panicking and drink this, but you're getting it ready. And you're having to really keep eye contact with them. And you may even want to put your hands kind of down on a table or down to the ground. So you're making a stance of stay in your body, because panic is up and out. And then there's a disassociation to the body, and then it gets stuck in its panic. So embodiment is everything. And then not only that, kind of grounding, or like, out on the earth is always good. I remember being with somebody in a panic attack once, and we had a tree, and we laugh about it now all the time. It's a really good friend, but I actually had her hug the tree, and it really worked. And then we just started laughing at ourselves, and she started laughing at herself, and it switched from to, and that was a great way out of the panic. And breathing. So you have to, eye contact is about keeping people present, and you expanding, because let's remember, inhale, we have to collect oxygen if you want to stop lack of oxygen, because that's what a panic is. It locks you up and you're not breathing and getting oxygen, and then exhaling and getting out toxins. So represent that breath, represent the grounding, and have some warm liquids and even some little warm milk. And that could be any kind of milk. Hemp milk is specific. Oat and hemp are specific to the nerves. That's the in it. And it's the best you can do, and then not reeling into a big, huge conversation after, like, we don't need to talk too much right now. Like, let's literally just kind of rest, and then to prevent them, well, we have to talk about what panic attacks are. So first off, the heart is involved, and here we are in Heart Health Month, right? So I kind of already, if people haven't seen my posts, or if you haven't gotten the email, you can let Andrea know and she'll get it to you. But I did a really great piece on what heart health really is kidney health. And so, oh, Madeline, we've been knowing each other for so long now. Let me just say, like, I'm back to hydration. I am so sorry to even laugh, but she's probably like, oh my gosh, DeAnna. But it's the truth. So when the kidneys, our oceans, go depleted, we actually go low blood pressure, because water volume is blood pressure. It elevates the adrenals. The adrenaline hormone is dry and hot. Fire rises, and it allows us to rise to the occasion, survive. It's survival mode, and it pitches the heart. So the kidneys, the adrenals are talking to the heart, and it makes the heart get tachycardia. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. And really can almost feel like a heart attack, because the muscles start reacting, and the pericardium, the sac your heart sits in, is very lubricated. It's a wet kapha organ. And it keeps everything lubed so that our heart doesn't pound out of our chest at every moment. And once the kidneys, the adrenals are high and dry, hot and dry, then the pericardium dries up, and it literally, when things dry up, what happens? They shrink up, they contract, and it puts pressure on the heart because it's drying out. That wet blanket is not so comfortable anymore. And then boom, pounding of the chest, and then all the muscles in the sternum, and the rhomboids, even in the back, and your shoulder blades, everything locks up trying to protect the heart. And that's why we feel like we're having a heart attack when we're having like a panic attack. Really common situation. So we got to talk about a few things. Hydration 101. Everybody needs to be on Atlantic gray salt. That's someone who's on a half a teaspoon twice a day, and again, that's not just straight salt. That's electrolytes, right? With magnesium, which are heart health 101. Magnesium is heart health 101. You could get her on some magnesium. That could be a really good thing to get. And, also, but let's talk about another thing here. Panic attacks do come from the psoas muscle. The psoas muscle harnesses the kidney adrenals, attaches to the spine, and it attaches to the spine like this, and then it splays out over the hips, fillets over the hips, and then it gets thinner and thinner and thinner, and it hooks right into the femur down at your perineum. So right next to the scrotum for men, or right next to the labias for women. And it hooks right there. So it's this entire stretch from our diaphragm all the way down to our root. So root chakra, sacrum, passions, desires, foundations, and solar plexus, gut instincts. And when we're in trauma, we lock that psoas, it's called the trauma muscle. We lock the psoas in, which also locks in the intestines, and it locks in the kidneys and the adrenals. And unfortunately, it locks us out of our breath too, because if we're locked in, there is no expanding and contracting, meeting the world, coming back to self. That's inhale, meeting the world, exhale, coming back to self. And so we lose our breathability, so that's going to be the long term. What do you do for psoas? Well, my favorite essential oil for psoas is definitely palmarosa. And you can use it even like 8 drops 3 times a day. So, can really take long term and a little bit higher dose. Love that about it. And it's great for nerves. It's great for muscles. My other one is marjoram. Same dosage. They're great together. But marjoram is a true antispasmodic. So it starts retraining the peristalsis to calm down in the intestines and that muscle to stay in a calm state, even when stressed, So I think marjoram and palmarosa would be really beautiful here. And then you could also think about, a foam roller is something we would be using for unwinding or stretching out and tenderizing the psoas, so someone can actually build breathability and cope a little bit more so they don't go into panic. And I've helped a lot of people like outgrow panic attacks who used to have panic attacks by them being able to kind of be like, oh, I'm locking in. I've got to breathe out. Just like you have to be able to recognize you're going into that psoas hold to be able to be like, wait a minute, where am I going? And then allow yourself to release out of it. But the foam roller, what you do is you put it right on your back, right at the sacrum, and then you lay on it and you put your knees up and then you roll your legs up and out and you roll that foam roller through your spine. And it might feel very, very tight when you start doing it because the muscle might be tight. And then you can put the foam roller right on your abdomen at the belly button and then put your hands and do cobra and roll all the way up to your diaphragm, all the way down to your pelvic floor. And even if you can even roll yourself down onto your legs a little bit beyond your hips. And you can foam roller out the front and the back of that psoas muscle and give yourself some freedom. So that would be really my tip for now. This calls for ashwagandha, a half a teaspoon morning and night, or maybe 1 teaspoon in the morning. So I could see ashwagandha being a great ally here for anyone who fits in this category. That's a really good, warm, nourishing, because panic comes from fear, cold, and dry contraction. So we would do the opposite to start retraining the body not to go into that trauma response. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Great. Our next question comes from Natasha. And Natasha asks, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about tinnitus. She has chronic ringing in her ears and pressure in her head.
Okay. So 2 different things are going on here. Ringing in the ear is a common symptom for vata, for cold or dry. They say, when the glass is full, then there's nourishment to the top of the head. And then the first symptoms that somebody has when their glass is emptying out is upper channels dry. So the top of your glass goes dry before the bottom of your glass, right? And so our body's the same way. So we oh my gosh, back to hydration. Geez, back to ashwagandha and Atlantic gray salt, that's for sure. But because nourishing and warming is needed for tinnitus. So that would be one thing. That's the long term. Like the cause would be that the blood pressure is low because the water volume is low. That's what I find. But there's a few other things that this could be coming from. That's just a main symptom in Vata. So I thought I should mention. It usually goes along with cracking joints and clenching jaw. So just kind of note those things as a unit often. Now, there's another thing. You said pressure. So pressure in the head is usually from old compaction, like old mucus, like somebody gets congested from being sick or from allergies and, or from too congestive of food. And then that mucus just never really drains or goes anywhere. And it starts, our sinuses in through here. We have sinuses down under the eye. We have a membrane right here on the top of the lid. And then we've got them all through here. And then it runs all the way through under our cheekbone and then connects to the salivary glands and the mucus forming in our mouth. And then it also connects over here through the ear into the eustachian tube. And that eustachian tube runs all the way down, and then all of it drains to the warrior lymph, the talking warrior lymph that's kind of like, I'm coming to your rescue, swollen glands or congestion. And that lymph then drains to that subclavian vein right below the clavicle. I have a great webinar because I talk about it so much. I'll just mention the webinar if you don't know about lymph. Please hang out with me more. and also just maybe get that webinar because it'll explain so much about your immune system and the river of life. But that river has to be open for anything to drain. So if there's pressure in congestion in the sinuses and upper channels, and if the lymph isn't draining down from those channels, everything backs up and pressurizes the ear. And then you could get ringing in the ear from pressure trying to push out. That's very different than dehydration. Your glass is empty. And really, you need to fill yourself up again and nourish the ears. And then that's where Mahanarayan makes really good ear drops and ear rubs. And Mahanarayan is incredibly wonderful. And I have an ashwagandha bala oil too. That's more nourishing. But Mahanarayan would be a little bit more opening, get the lymph activated, get the blood flowing, and a gua sha. So I think Mahanarayan and a gua sha would be amazing. And I also have steam tablets. They look kind of like you think of a bath bomb, but they've got all the immunoboost, like all my immunity herbs are in there, essential oils. And you just take this little tablet and you just plop it down in some boiling water and put a towel over your head. And you could be steaming and opening all of this up with those medicated tablet, right? With that medicinal tablet, plant medicinals, I should say. And once you've opened this up with warmth, then you could be under there and you could gua sha and you could find like, ow, that's sore over there. And then you're like, well, if it's sore over there, something needs to change because the lymph speaks in pain and it wants to be pumped and moved. And pretty soon it'll just start draining and opening up. And then all that pain goes away. And all of a sudden, the pressure's been relieved. So yeah, I think steam tablets and steam inhalations would be brilliant. Mahanarayan with a gua sha. I'll give you a cheapo that might be right in your backyard or like at your local grocery store in the parking lot, which is chewing on rosemary leaves. So, if this is a question for somebody who maybe doesn't have the finances to, go and buy every suggestion, we do want to keep in mind that there's rosemary everywhere and it loves to be picked because the more you pick some rosemary, the more it grows, and so it wants that. And just chewing on a few of those leaves and swallowing it, really good, for those upper channels and very good for the ear issue. Yeah. I also give vetiver essential oil to people with tinnitus, and you just take one drop of vetiver and you just smear it into your ears and work it down in your canal just a little bit. And you rub it all along the ear channel. Oh, I just lost my earring. And you just rub it along that ear channel and you just have really nice, it's a resin. It's not a volatile gas, it's a resin. So it'll just slow time release transdermally and start giving some protection to that ear and calming down that eardrum that's affected and literally telling you by sound. It's talking to you. So yeah, nourishment all the way.
It's brilliant. All right. So our next question comes here from Tolly. How might we understand extremely dry hair? In this case, not due to thyroid. Tolly's had this all tested and the results are normal. What else could this be due to?
Okay, well, there's a few things that have to be thought of. Like there's a few categories. You could have dry hair from a foreign invader. And I don't think a lot of people talk about this, but I notice a lot in my practice that people who have like quick hair loss or really dry hair, and they're like, DeAnna, my hair was never this texture. It was not this dry. Because some people might just be Vata and their hair is more dry because they run more dry. And so how normal is it throughout your life is one question. And then it's more about caring for Vata. So we're back to nourishing and warming. But, and this is why I talk about dehydration, because look how many questions end up being surrounding hydration itself. You know, dry hair is going to be dry out. So how normal is it? But what if it just happened and it's like not thyroid? What's going on? What I would really say is might be heavy metals. A lot of people have heavy metals in their system. So get a blood panel and they'll have them in there, and, you know, even since a kid. And it just doesn't seem like a big deal until sometimes we get a little older and they start really accumulating and causing more calcification on the feet, or, you know, kidney stones or kidney gravel in the kidneys. And it just starts adding up and becoming more of an irritant. And they do cause kidney deficiency, heavy metals, and you could get really dry hair or lose your hair. So blood panel would be a good idea to check for heavy metals. And then the other thing in foreign invader land is if you've been living with a parasite for a really long time. And again, this is something you're gonna have to figure out with the lab. But these are things that don't get discussed in the world of hair dry out or loss. And again, parasites, they eat you up, you know, they're just chomp, 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 you know, and they start really affecting, you know, even things like hair. The other thing is hair loss is, let's know what hair is a byproduct of. So hair, nails, and teeth are a byproduct of your bones. So if your bone health is weak, like if you have osteopenia or if you have osteoporosis, then those are going to be things, you know, that are inevitably going to dry your hair out, and people get more split ends and their hair goes a little bit more wiry. And, you know, that would be something where, again, bones are Vata. So we're still back to that nourishing, warming, because we need to do the opposite of dry. And that's all of our questions so far have been around dry and things that really are, you know, not nourishing us fully. So that's kind of one of the main things I think of. You know, I could tell you about all kinds of oils. Like that would be definitely a job for ashwagandha bala oil. And you'd want to do scalp oilinations. I also noticed that leaving your hair oily, so you're just gonna have to get inventive with some nice wraps, or, you know, put it up if it's long enough, or you have to get inventive. But leaving your hair oily, you know, for a couple days, you will just like soak that oil up little bit at a time instead of shampooing it out, stripping your hair again. So how long can you leave some oil in your hair? And how much can you see that you absorb? And then also we have to think about the hair follicle. So here's where, you know, it's so interesting how many people I have using gua sha. and then nobody gua shas their scalp. And I'm like, oh, it feels so good to get in there with a gua sha, and that's why they've got little curves on them and such, they fit on your scalp just perfect. You've got to get circulation to the top of the head. So the other reason the main reason for hair loss or dry hair, the main reason is low blood pressure or anemia, which are both vata, cold, dry, So yeah, I guess those are some of my things I would really go for. I would think about shea butter because it's highly absorbable to the amount of collagen in your hair. And sometimes other oils just don't quite get in there and they just sit on the hair more. So shea is thicker, yes, but you're going to notice that it just kind of sops up in there. So that's going to be one of my favorites to use. Yep. That's what I think of for that. The only other thing I think of, and actually it came to me very first, so let's just go with my intuitive, right? I went with the one nobody looks for, foreign invader. But my intuition, when I first heard the question, I kind of went to this like chemicals in the environment and chemicals in the body. Like we know elders when they start getting, unfortunately, if they get highly medicated, their hair just dries out like crazy. So, are there chemicals in your environment? Do you work around chemicals? Do you live on a medication? Because we have to remember those are chemicals. And you may need to. So it's not to say that that's a bad thing. You may need it. But it could be a reason why your hair is dry and you can't figure it out. So chemical exposure is another one that is indicative of dry hair. Yeah.
That is some amazing advice. I've been noticing my hair is getting drier as well. So I think I might pick up some of that shea butter and see what I can do.
And you know what? Your hair is probably getting drier because you've been doing all these fabulous colors and having so much fun. You know what I mean? And,
That's true. Yeah.
And so that's that kind of idea that it's getting drier, maybe not because you're more dehydrated, but maybe just because, there's some chemicals in there that are making it so beautiful. I used to do it too, right? I've only been gray for like a year and a half, Yeah. So I know all about that.
All right. Well, we do have a question. And it is about hormones, which ties into your webinar this weekend. I hope folks are signed up for that. But this question is, I'd love to know your thoughts on topical hormone creams. I've listened to an OBGYN talk about how wonderful they are in strengthening tissues and improving mood and sex drive. I've also heard they can be dangerous. There's so much to know. It's biology mimicking to conventional. So what are your thoughts? How long do they last in the body when used topically, and what are the best ways to navigate the subject?
Okay. It's a good question. I get this question a fair amount with, clients in menopause, and, maybe their vaginal wall is not as juicy as it used to be. And so intercourse is more challenging. And maybe they're like, I don't want to use a lube. Like I've always been my own lube. And I'm like, oh yeah, I don't want to lose that either. So I totally get it, and it does make for tighter tissue. So this is a real good question because it's a real thing that happens to a lot of women and doesn't get discussed. And, I can give them all kinds of amazing oils, and we can talk about massaging the vaginal wall and making sure that you get oil up at the cervix, which really keeps everything primed and nourished. So, a lot more massage, maybe even going in there with a nice wand and being able to like really open up the tissue. That's a big deal. But as much as I have people do this and yoni steams, massage, oil, yoni steams, And that's all with linden flower. Linden flower is the most nourishing yoni steam ever. But it just doesn't always get to where that person is struggling and needs help. And so I have come across this wall so many times with people who are like, I don't really do a lot of like medicine, or like I only do it when I have to. And people get scared with these because there's estrogen relation, and we know estrogen has relation to cancer. And so there's some really tricky decisions here. I think what I really want to say is, and I just 2 weeks ago, I said to a client who's been struggling and trying really hard for like a year, and she's like, still. And I'm like, maybe you just should do that cream. Your doctor mentioned it to you. You can get it. Maybe you should do the cream. And what I've noticed is sometimes people can do the cream for like 3 months, get really primed and juicy, and then you don't have to use it for 3 months. And then you start drying out again, and then you pick up the cream again, use it for a couple months, and you just don't have to stay on it forever. But another part of this question was, it doesn't work forever. So you will have to use it ongoing or on and off for it to do its job. It does show, literal hormones are getting into your bloodstream. The cream is transdermal. So if an essential oil can get into your blood through the skin, so can progesterone cream. So that for sure, I think is important to know, that there are chemicals going into your blood. But I don't find them to like mess up the liver or dry out the kidneys, or it feels like it's this really time released through the skin, just amount that is sort of priming your system and keeping you, juicy in a time when you can't be juicy anymore. I've never in all my years seen somebody use progesterone cream and then get cancer. I don't see that relation. It's not like I'm tracking that clinically, but I am a clinical practitioner, and I see people through years and years into their lives. I've got clients I've been seeing for over 30 years now. No joke. Many clients I've been seeing since early days Sonoma County, which is 22 years. And so I've been able to see people make these choices, and how did it affect them? And it feels pretty generally benign as a synthetic option. And that's really what it showed me. So there could be research otherwise. Everyone knows, like, I more track what I see and have so much interaction with humans and their health that I have enough to track and have an opinion. But I'm not going to be somebody who did a clinical study and can tell you whether those are just fine or not fine. And I bet if you go online, you're going to find both of those. You're going to find these are not fine. You're going to find these are great. So my suggestion is, if you can't work this any other direction, like do the yoni steams, do the massage, do the oil, like try those things, see if you can get your own juices flowing. And if you can, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to consider. So I guess I'm kind of down the middle. I'm hoping I don't have to make that decision myself as I get older. But who knows what you would decide if that's the situation you're in. And it's really nice to still feel like you're juicy and can be intimate. So I do think it's important on that level, and it probably makes it a little bit more worth it if it helps you out. So I guess that's where I stand with it, but I just don't see it hurting people, and that's usually my, my indication, like even when people need cortisone, or when people need prednisone, steroids, I'm kind of like, do what you want. I'm all about medical choice, right? So like, do whatever feels right. Not fun to live in pain. But those are things that I see absolutely affect a body in adverse ways. Like they show me that they really wreak havoc on the body. And so those are medications where I'll just be like, these meds have showed me that they kind of, they only help you out for a minute and then you got all these other problems. And I don't feel that way about the progesterone cream or the hormone creams. And I feel the same way about bioidentical hormones. Same idea, those mimicking of hormones, those specialists who do that, I have found them to give people great relief. And so I'm kind of like, I'm not seeing adverse effects and I'm seeing great relief. So isn't that what we're really striving for here, is to choose something for ourselves that actually makes us feel better? And that's more what I've seen from the choice of those creams. But my suggestion is going to be on and off, and you want to know you can be good on your own too. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we may have time for just one more. Got this question from a viewer. I would love to know more about a chronic issue I have around back acne. I have a history of antibiotic abuse and had cystic acne as a teen. I switched to birth control, which helped with the acne. And then finally, at age 25, took control and naturally have been on a healing journey of healing my gut and combating yeast. I've come a long way. It's been almost 10 years on a healing path. My skin looks great, but I now break out on my back, a place I never used to have breakouts. I notice it gets worse with sugar consumption, but even with a clean diet and yeast no longer dominating my life, my back seems never fully clear. I would love your insights on what could be the missing piece in this skin puzzle.
Well, I think maybe there's not as much yeast overgrowth in your gut anymore, and you're maybe not putting new yeast into your gut, but that doesn't mean there isn't still yeast that's living in your pores. And I'm going to suggest sweating, like really doing a lot of sweating. Cardio is great, but you can sweat in a bath too, or in a shower, but I am going to suggest that you get that skin cleared. So a couple things you could do. My cleansing tea is very specific for yeast because it's such the most common thing I see that needs to be cleansed for most people's bodies. But you can also use that cleansing tea as a compress. So you can make the tea and then strain it and then take a compress towel and soak it in there and then put that on your back like a warm compress with that cleansing tea. You can even do a steam inhalation and just don't have any shirt or anything on. And then you steam your back, not just your face. But what we know, and from my esthetician self, which my first career was cosmetology and aestheology. So I know lots about skin, is you could still have that live yeast that just really has never gotten out of those pockets, those little pore pockets. And there's a lot of muscle on your back. There's less muscle on our face. So it's easier for everything just to clear out. So you might have some die-off in the muscle, and there might be some lactic acid in the muscle that is keeping that yeast alive in the pores. And it just kind of keeps reinventing itself until you clean those pores out. So you could get a back facial, I know I do, back facials. Like if I'm with somebody in a panchakarma, or I'm with a client and I keep seeing that there's back acne and it's just usually is a little bit more stubborn, I'll actually, steam, and get the pores all open. And then you put a mask on there. So you could get like a really nice French green clay would be very easy to find. And then you put a mask on, you do a back mask, you let it all dry out, and then you use the mask, like it gets all crumbly and cracky. You actually use it like a scrub, and you just scrub the back with all that powdered mask clay, and you just really work it. And then you put a compress back on there and you clean it off. You get it warm again. And then you need someone to excrete those pores. So you actually need somebody to go and do a little excretion of those pores and clean them out. And a good facialist, I mean, that's what they do. They do extractions, and you need to extract the pores. And that's going to be the biggie. There's one other thing. There's a couple other things I could tell you to do that are in the essential oil world, which is if you did this whole process, kind of think about clay mask a couple times a week. Think about these, cleansing, compresses and sweating. And then you could take bergamot and frankincense. So if you did like 4 mils of frankincense to 6 mils of bergamot, it could even be a 5 mil. It could be equal amounts. Make it easy on you. But make your little thing, or 3 drops of Frankie, 3 drops of bergamot, and then you use that on those pores, and that'll clean the pore, kill the yeast, and then it won't extract for you, so it won't get it out, but it'll kill it in there, and you'll probably start clearing up. But extractions are going to be the thing that is the truth of this question. Like, that's where you're really going to see your skin change, and not a bad thing to be thinking about. I don't know where you live, but I will tell you, one of my dearest old friends in this lifetime, her name is Michelle Smith. I'm going to give her a plug. She is at Gloss Beauty in Fairfax, down in Marin. Really amazing little facial studio. Both of the practitioners there are incredibly good, but Michelle is one of them, and she has made an entire career of like skin conditions and estheology, and she is the most meticulous extractor ever. And the other thing Michelle has is an ozone oxygen. It like infiltrates your tissue. So like when I go, by the way, if my skin looks good today, because I have had skin conditions most of my life, but it's because of Michelle. She takes care of me. And she takes this little oxygen machine and she drives oxygen down into my pores, and it kills everything that's living in the pore, because yeast has nothing on oxygen. So not only will she do extractions, but she'll heal your skin up too. And there's many people like that. But if you are local enough, I can't help but mention, just Michelle would be all over that. She'd be like, yeah, let's get in there and like change this up. And she's very thorough and very gentle too for the type of work she does. Yeah, but I'm sure you'll find someone where you are. Most facialists do back facials. You just have to ask around and find somebody who really knows how to do that. Yeah.
We have one last question. It's actually a reference to the previous question about estrogen, and it comes from Ms. Daskar, who is joining us from YouTube. And the question is, can you comment on the different estrogens available? I'm assuming that's the biomimic. They were recommended estriol versus estradiol.
I don't know if I don't think I'm the right person for that question. I know both of those. I know people have to use those. I work really hard to help people not to have to take those. Sometimes there's a hysterectomy, and so they're imperative. But taking estrogen is tricky business. You need to know that that's imperative. Otherwise, that is hard on the body. And if you really do need to take it, I would more talk to multiple doctors and really get opinions. And I would look up both of those medications, and I would look at the side effects of each one. I would look at how much research of each one, which one's older, which means, older meds sometimes are better because they've tweaked them enough to make them easy on the body. Sometimes new ones are way more improved, and so there's a reason for that, but you have to weigh that out. But I'm not the best person to tell you which one to take. because I prefer people not taking those unless you really have to. But I'm not the right person to pick that out or talk about the differences. So yeah, I'll always be authentic and honest here when I'm not the right person to answer the question. I think it's just most integrous for me to just be honest about that. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So I'm sorry I can't answer that better for you, but I think I gave you some places to go look and start looking them up, because you can look up your physician desk reference. Maybe that's a really good thing to mention here. The PDF, it comes out every single year. You can buy it in a bookstore, but you can get it online now too. And that physician desk reference has every medication that's on the market and every new medication. So it's updated constantly. And everything there, it tells you the chemistry, it tells you its function, it tells you its primary chemistry properties, and then it also has to list all contraindications. And that's where I look up things when I hear of a medication I don't know much about, because it's not my world. But I do have to look up medications because I work with essential oils, and those chemistries compete as like primary forms of medicinal value. And so I do, when somebody's medicated, I have to kind of look it up, figure it out. And I also use that because I think we are often taking medications and not looking at the contraindications because we don't want to know them, I mean, it's kind of like, the commercials, and they're like, and suicide, you're like, what was that? Excuse me, contraindication is suicide? Wait a minute here. But we don't want to hear that because maybe we wanted that supportive medication. But we have to know, otherwise you might be getting symptoms and you don't even know it's from that medication. It might need accompaniment. It might need different dosage. There might be a different med that's better for you. So I think it's important for us to be like, I can still choose to do whatever I want. I can still choose to do the medication if I want, but I think we need to be educated, and just really, which organs are most affected by estradiol versus estriol, what are those? And then which organs are weak in your body? And you don't want to, if you have weak kidneys and one of those is hard on kidneys, may not be the right med for you. So that's kind of how I would teach us how to research our medications a little bit more and look a little beyond just people's opinions on them. PDR, it's been around forever. It's good to know.
Wonderful. Well, the time has flown by as it does. Thank you so much to everyone who is with us here live. And if you're watching this as a replay, thank you so much for joining us. As I mentioned briefly earlier, DeAnna has a webinar this weekend, Communication of Hormones. We are still enrolling. It's a Zoom-based webinar, and it's 10 to noon Pacific, yes. I believe.
Yes.
So pop on over to our website to enroll, and you'll probably see pinned in the chat here DeAnna's amazing in-person clinical foundations course is coming up starting in March. It's in the Redwoods. It's life-changing. It's hands-on, completely safely done, obviously, but just remarkable information. And we are enrolling with that. There's a payment plan for it. I encourage you to take a look, and you can more about it at the link that's pinned there. And we are kind of in the last days of some nice sales on our website, so check it out, and you will see the links to the products and items that DeAnna described in the description of this video later, but stay tuned for that. So any last words for us, DeAnna?
Well, I'm feeling very generous as you talk about my clinical class, and I would love for it to be full, and I would love for it to just as many people as I can help to get to that class. I would love to help. So in my generosity, I just want to say, if you're watching this and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can, like, contact Andrea. And I'm just putting a verbal out there right now that if you say, hey, I saw DeAnna on Ask DeAnna Anything, and she said I could do this class for $3,200, we will do it at $3,200, which was the early bird special. So, just plugging, if you're if you're inspired right now and feeling, like this is the right time for you, then you can just contact Andrea and we will honor that special that I am putting out there right now to this specific group of people. Yeah. So
That's exciting.
Maybe that helps a little. $800 off. I don't, that always helps. Is that 100? 600 off.
So, the email address is info@DeAnnaessentials.com, and I put that in the chat here. So yeah, if you're in the sound of our voices, take a look at that and consider that offer. All right, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be live on YouTube and Facebook again in about 2 weeks. So everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you all for joining.